If you put out quality content out there, it will always reward you. I don't think there's any platform that doesn't reward quality content. And obviously, quality is a bit fake or relative, but I guess the best way to describe quality is if it helps other people because they will come back for more. Before I post something, I want it to generate this effect of, okay, I get this, I understand this as a reader, and I could probably execute on this today. If you do that well, you hit a few check boxes. It's gonna grow your following.
If you don't know Nick by now, I don't know where you've been hiding, but Nick Broekema, he built and exited his own agency, was an interim design leader for a $100+ million scale ups, and one of them became a unicorn. His design work has been displayed at Times Square, and Nick was invited by Google to speak about LinkedIn content. So who better to talk to us about LinkedIn content? And one very simple thing that I want to start with, Nick, what is content design?
I would say that, by the way, thanks for the intro. That made me feel very special, all these milestones. But I would say that content design is a combination of copywriting and design for LinkedIn specifically. So when I just started out, I was copying guys like Justin Welsh and Matt Parker and Jasmine Alic. And after a while, I felt little bit stale. Like I felt like the content I was putting out there was copy only, and I was doing stuff that most people were doing as well. And then I thought, okay, I have all this design background, so maybe I should do something with it. So that was the moment that I think it was about 2 years ago, maybe 6 months in, that I was starting to add designs. So I started doing carousels and more like visuals. And then the guys that I actually copied or borrowed stuff from, like Matt Parker and Jasmine Alic, they reached out to me to either work together or they or ask me like, hey, can I use this visual for my content? And then I thought, okay, this I might be onto something. So that was the moment that I thought I'm gonna create content that uses copywriting and design because it was for me it was a very obvious way to stand out from a lot of people. And that was the start of a new content direction, but also my offer, what it is today.
Awesome. So basically, and it's one thing that you designers have in the advantages. Your content, your work actually worked for you, and they started reaching out to you because of it. Amazing. Right. So then, if you have to convince anybody to come on LinkedIn, let's say that you did it, but people will say, okay, but Nick is an amazing designer, so he managed to do this. Like he put copywriting together with design. But what's the benefit of showing up on LinkedIn? Can anybody do it? And what are they missing?
I would say that anybody could do it, and the most important thing that LinkedIn has to offer, depending on your commitment, is visibility. So my first post was in July 2022, so that's like 2.5 years ago. And before that, nobody really knew me. So even when I was running this agency and we had like a nice office in Amsterdam and we had a small team and clients, nobody really knew us. Like we have a website, but we didn't do anything around marketing. We were totally dependent on word of mouth and referrals, and that made us very vulnerable. So that was really stressful. And after like we exited the company and doing some internal work, I thought, okay, now I have this freelance consulting experience, agency experience. So I wanted to do more like business mentoring, but I had no clients whatsoever. So that was the moment that I thought, okay, I'm going to take the plunge. I'm going to start creating content on LinkedIn. And that was actually really rough because in the beginning, nobody really wants to know you and you're talking to crickets basically. But that was the moment that I thought, okay, I'm just going to do this thing. And I know that visibility is needed to get more customers and to build this. I didn't know back then, but I was actually starting to build a personal brand, which is also like, yeah, a visible reputation or like one that's kind of like a living entity, if you will. So, yeah, to make a long story short, I think it's visibility and creating opportunities for whatever you're doing, especially on LinkedIn. I feel like the opportunities, they just like every 3 months they seem to evolve to like a new segment, like a bigger segment, because in the beginning it's like compliments and people will ask you like for advice, and then all of a sudden you get more customers, and then you're not depending on cold outreach or outreach anymore. And no, well, today I'm like talking to you guys. I'm getting invited for podcast shows and Google, and so if you just keep doing it, the rewards just keep compounding in a way.
Nick, what you describe here is like a very typical creator's journey. And I think most of us, probably not Fran, but myself for sure, I just became more active on LinkedIn, realized that social media, and just decided to give it a go. So this is like one type of trajectory that people start actually building their business together with their marketing. But on the other hand, if let's say a founder or a CEO of a successful business that's already doing, let's say between 50K a month, 100K a month, so definitely like a 7-figure business, listens to that podcast, how would you convince them to get on LinkedIn and start posting?
It's funny that you asked because I just did a post about something that I noticed on LinkedIn a few days ago. I think there was a startup founder or a scale up founder maybe, and he just did one comment on a post of the founder of HubSpot, and the apparently the comment was so good that he was like, "Yeah, I'll invest in your product." So even if you don't do content, like this visibility thing can be so like it's so surprisingly well working well for you. So even if you're in the, let's say, the 50 to 100K range, you don't have to be the next creator. You don't have to be the next influencer, but just building relationships, it's doing it obviously consistently. I think it's going to open new doors for any segment. So even beyond 100K months, I've talked to creators, but also business owners who have significantly larger LTV, and they also like they're a little bit more in the background because they get a lot of attention if they are getting visible. But yeah, the the upsides are definitely outweighing the downsides, I would say.
When it comes to the service sector, especially, so think about like all kinds of service-based industries, how many of the founders, like percentage wise, do you think are actually active on LinkedIn? And I don't mean posting content or commenting, but just logging in fairly regularly and just checking out what's going on.
Yeah, so I guess we all know this percentage of 1% of all the users, they post content weekly. So let's assume if that's like mostly marketing people or creators, then I think the number of people who are actually founders and are like doing content or engaging or being interactive on LinkedIn is probably like 0.0 per 1 per 2%. I don't know. Like it must be very few. By the way, I'd love to be challenged by this because the only data that I've found so far about that 1% is still like the most recent stats that I can find. But yeah, the number is very low. I would also say I just posted about this today that in some areas the bar is low as well. Call me biased, but I would recommend any founder to go out there and just talk about their experiences, talk about their business, talk about like professional stories, try to help peers, and so on.
No, no, but actually, I wanted to ask you something else. I wasn't talking about posting or commenting. I meant just simply active, as in logging into the platform and actually consuming content.
I have no idea. Like
Fair
I
enough.
wish I would have the insights of it. I have no idea how many people would actually be active on that in that category.
Fair enough. I was hoping that you would have some kind of an estimate that, because Fred and I, we have different sources and we ballpark it constantly. I don't think there is an official statistic about how many people are actually logging into LinkedIn, but Fran found a source that states that about 80% of the B2B deals are at least initiated through LinkedIn, maybe not necessarily closed, but initiated.
Wow. That's a big number. I'm
It's
actually
a big
happy to
number.
hear that. Yeah, I guess that's the funny thing. I'm sure you guys resonate with this, but everybody's on LinkedIn talk about lurkers, and I guess if we have about 1% of people that are active on LinkedIn, then there must be a big percentage of people who are lurking but are not visible in that context. So I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, I've actually worked with clients as well who have barely any engagement in their posts, and apparently it looks like they don't have any attention. But their audiences are very specific, like executives and stuff. They don't engage, but they're lurking there, and that's very clear because we managed to close sales.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because when I talk to my clients, especially if they're kind of like not seasoned yet in LinkedIn space. I always tell them, don't pay attention to likes and comments because it's usually peers if you get them. But the people who are actually will buy from you for some reason, they will never like and comment your stuff, but they will definitely view your profile and they will send you connection requests and they will follow you. So those are also really good indicators of how to see if your content works or not.
I love it that you went in that direction because Dana and I, we speak a lot about this, how impressions and engagement mean nothing, especially if you're using all those hacks to get them. What matters is actual interest. So you can't generate interest of people who are not in your niche or who are not interested in what you do, right? So intention is everything, intent. It doesn't matter, like people keep chasing those figures of likes and comments and all of that, and they get into engagement pods and all of that just to display those figures, but it's very misleading because that person is not your ideal client unless you're selling LinkedIn services. That's the only person who profits from that. So yeah, I love it that you said that, and it just goes to back us up on that position. If you had to share like some quick tips, some quick secrets for people to start getting visibility on, as you said, attention is everything. It's about becoming visible, for people to start becoming visible as quickly as possible on LinkedIn. What would that be?
Yeah. So I think the advice is going to be either disappointing or a bit boring, but everybody's yapping about consistency and like it's a cliche, but it's actually true. You don't, there's, to my knowledge, there are no hacks or like very advanced things or secrets that will help you like fly. Everybody has to start from the bottom, but the things that I see that people mess up the most is that, and I've done this myself. Like in the beginning, I would talk about pricing strategy, talk about remote working, about agency life, even a little bit of AI. Like I would talk about 8 to 10 different topics, and nobody really knew what I was doing. So I was like all over the place. I was obviously the content wasn't that great back then, but when I learned that most people on LinkedIn around like with let's say within my wheelhouse want leads and they want to create content that attracts leads, that was the moment that I thought, okay, maybe I should talk about this thing only. And even though I have so much more to offer, because it's kind of like a fallacy that most people have, like yeah, I can talk about all these different things, and people must know that I'm knowledgeable and that I'm an expert. But once you become very specific about those, what you do really well and what people actually need, then things will fall more on their place because your ideal customer profile will make more sense, your offer will make more sense, and your content will make more sense. And those are the three only things, also engagement, but it's kind of like an overlapping thing that you need to make LinkedIn successful. So I would say like avoid talking about too many topics or being too broad. I see a lot of people they forget to use context. By context, I mean like tangibility, talking about a topic that resonates with the people that you want to attract. Like give them proper examples, use stories instead of like regurgitating online information. Because if you're gonna give someone a top 10 list of things to use, but you don't tell them like how to use it, you might as well just choose one tool to elaborate on and talk about that specific topic from your own experience because that's context. And I think that's a lot of the thing that a lot of people don't do. If they do it well, it becomes relevant and it will resonate with the right people. If it doesn't, it just shows people something, but it doesn't really teach them anything or provoke them.
That's beautiful. Actually, when I think Nick Broekema, first thing that comes to mind is your carousel about that story with the princess, or
Yeah,
immediately. I don't know. I saw that like months, maybe a year ago. I don't know.
that
No,
was
that's a really good carousel then.
Yeah, it was kind of a unique one. I don't even know how I came up with it, but I think I was I had a ghostwriting offer back then. I was doing all these sales calls and um, every I think it was about CEOs in the beginning. And they would all tell me the same thing, but they would really act on it. And I thought, okay, let's just do a playful way. I think I repurposed a few elements from previous carousels and I put that together and I think I used it like 3 or 4 times and it always seems to do well. It's also having fun, right?
That's an important part. Uh, Something that you said, Nick, really hit a chord for me, especially when you say it's better to pick one tool and just talk about it and give some context in the story. And I feel like a lot of people have been cheated by this really mainstream advice of give value, give value. And when people hear that, they think, I need to create this massive list, like 101 AI tools that you need to use, and just like hammer people with facts and lines and just post twice a day with all kinds of different things. And this is not what value is after all. It's better to be very well informed and to go really in big details into one thing and give it context and give it substance rather than just, you know, basically yammering every day on LinkedIn without being too specific about anything, isn't it?
I would say so, yeah, because it's really easy to basically just grab available information and put that into a carousel, but it's going to be much more interesting and also more showing more credibility if you take this one tool. Let's say, like I did a post about Gamma, for instance. And what I did, I would take my sales deck that converted like 85% in the last month, I think, or 2 months ago, or Q1, that was it. And so that's like physical evidence of what I use every day or every week. So I created an outline of that. I made it as simple as possible to have people understand what they should do if they want to recreate it. And then they can use Gamma to basically recreate it themselves. So what I've done there is a pretty good example of how to, let's say, deliver value in a way that it's easy to understand. And I have this quote in my mind always, like before I post something, I want it to generate this effect of, okay, I get this, I understand this as a reader, and I could probably execute on this today. If you do that well, you hit a few check boxes. So let's say it's gonna grow your following after if you do it often enough because it's valuable and people will think like, okay, this is simple and actionable enough, but it will also show you your credibility and authority in a way that it's fun and not necessarily salesy. So on the one hand, you get more followers, which is something that you need to grow, obviously. But the most important thing is that while you're growing your following, you also attract people who feel like, hey, this is pretty interesting. I can probably do this today because I have this mini guide, but I don't either have the time for this or I need someone who's doing this as a full-time job or at least the expert. So I'm going to hire that person instead. So that's why I really like educational kind of content in a way that it shows people that you've done it yourself. I think that's like the most powerful content that you can put out there without being getting boring.
Yeah, we've learned that a while ago that how I beats how to, like anytime, for
Hmm.
various reasons. But you know, we've talked through quite a bit of theory, as in like what works, what doesn't. But let's put us into a bit more actionable steps for our audience. So if someone already has a successful business, for example, and they want to start leveraging LinkedIn, what would be like a 5-step framework that you would give them to just to begin?
Yeah. I'm not sure if I can end with 5 steps, but let's see how far I get.
Okay, as many
So
as you want.
but this is actually an exercise that I would do with content coaching clients. So let's assume that you already have a body of work or experience. Then, without doing any research or use AI or whatever, you can just ask yourself a few simple questions like, what do I enjoy doing the most? What am I good at? What do people, it's kind of like an ikigai kind of thing. What do people need? But also like, who was my best customer from a revenue point of view, from an impact point of view, from, let's say, a chemistry, that's a really important one. And that's already like a very early stage ICP, like an ideal customer profile. So that's the first thing. That's the base of what I feel like that should be the first step. Once you've got that ICP, the funny thing is, like, if you answer all these questions, I have about 14 of them that are easy to answer by heart, you already have the first content hooks because all the answers there are relevant and they are based on experience and they're arguably stories as well. But also, if you have this ICP, let's say doc with all the answers, it would also be easy to think about the offer that you need. And that's step two. So based on the ICP, you create the offer, and the offer should have, like, let's say 3 elements most that you want to be known for. For me, for instance, it's design, it's copywriting, and it's sales, for instance. And that's the only thing that I'm talking about. So those are like content pillars in a way. So what I do with my clients then is like, we nail this in the first call. We do this in the kickoff call, and I call it like a 60% kickoff call, in the sense of we want to be 60% happy to move forward, because if you're in this stage, it's very easy to end up in assumptions, and you want to validate your own thoughts and your doubts and all that kind of stuff, and then you end up in doing weeks of research, and then you waste a lot of time. So by the 60%, I mean, we have to go out there, we have to go create content based on this, let's say, this content guide that we created together. And you can also do this back home. And then you would have a whole arsenal of topics that you can talk about based on the ICP and the offer. And the next thing is, when you want to get that 60% to 100% by validating your offer and your ICP at the same time, through the content, through maybe likes and comments, but especially DMs. And the first goal is to get sales calls. And those sales calls should actually be more like data collection points, because it kind of takes the edge off as well. Because if you feel like, I need to sell something, you're gonna fumble the ball like you're on the first date. You're nervous, and you're gonna talk too much. And you don't ask any questions. But if you feel like, okay, I have this goal of collecting information from this person, whether they're gonna buy from me or not, then you collect even more information to A, improve your content and make it more specific, and B, to improve your sales touch points, and also the offer, and also the ICP. So it's like multi-beneficial. So I think that, so this ICP, offer, content, and engagement. So those are actually the 4 steps, I would say, that you need to get things going. And the 5th step, so we actually get to 5 steps, is continuous iteration, because now you're basically collecting data and you're improving your ICP and your offer and your content. But what a lot of people tend to do is they forget the whole analysis, and they focus on likes or comments, or like whatever it is that you're focusing on. But that's why I don't always agree with the statement that you have to be consistent, because if you're doing the wrong stuff consistently,
Yeah.
you're not improving, and you're actually going backwards. That's
Yeah,
why
absolutely.
the last part is very important.
Yeah, I love your system. It sounds pretty solid. I just have one question about it. How do you go from the content to the sales call?
So there's a mix of content pieces, and they're not unique. It's based on the top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel. And the only difference there is that what I try to do with clients is that I want to keep it as relevant as possible using experiences, and I don't want to really focus on awareness that much, but I want to focus more on showing a personal side of things regarding the business and resonating with the right people. So if you do this consistently, let's say 5 posts a week, there's always like a BOFU content piece that it's a little bit more outgoing as a hard sell. So that's going to have like a sales CTA at the bottom. And that's basically inviting people to, let's say, DM, or depending on the client and their craft, you can also invite them to, let's say, go to your profile and book a sales meeting. So to make a long story short, we create content that should provoke people to get in touch with you through the DMs. DMs can be very valuable. In the DMs, you can ask just a couple of simple questions, like why are we talking right now? Like what's the thing that you're struggling in terms of what I do? Obviously, you would reword it. And then another question would be, what have you tried before but doesn't really work for you? And then, like, let's say we're going to work together, what would make the collaboration a home run? And those 3 questions are basically everything that you need to know to say, like, okay, I think I've heard enough. I've had I have this client just like you, and we had these results. How about we just jump on a call, or do like a 20-minute call, and I show you how it works, and then we can ask each other some questions, and we'll take it from there. That's always something that you really want to treat like casually, more like a friend, than be very corporate about it and just pitch the entire thing. But that's a long answer to that's how it would approach getting people in a sales call.
From your experience with working with your clients, do you feel like this system works for everyone, regardless of their account size, or what have you seen?
No, I would say no. I would say that the tactic, yes, it works, but the conversion there in the beginning, it's definitely harder. Like when I was starting out, I had 900 followers, and there's definitely a difference between how people trust you. And I don't think it has necessarily is linked to a follower account, but how often they've seen your stuff and how well you've presented your evidence. And in the beginning, that's just hard. So in the beginning, you'll get more rejection. You arguably have less or fewer case studies. People don't really know you in terms of content. So it definitely takes some time to build momentum and to build that visibility to get people in a sales call. So yeah, I don't think it's equal for everybody, but the principles work for everybody. It's just that depending on where you are, it's going to take a little bit more attempts.
All right.
Nick, that's actually driving us to one of our next questions. So that's a very, very good bridge. I work with quite a few clients, and some of them are only really starting out. Like they've got, let's say, 200, 300 connections. And in terms of reach, like what we're seeing right now is just abysmal. So I think anyone who's on LinkedIn is trying to drive lead generation through LinkedIn is very worried about this right now. I mean, organic reach is just going to keep on diminishing. Like we don't have to, tiptoe around that fact. Like we all know it. So do you think that this prompts a change in strategy? Do you think that this would affect your strategy in some kind of a way? And right now, I know I'm asking you three questions at the same time, so pick whichever one you want. But right now, with the current state of the algorithm and how much organic reach is available, how much time do you think someone with 200 connections would need to actually start getting attention?
It's a great question, and it's a hard one, right? Like we all kind of see the buzz around declining reach, and I've noticed this myself. There's a few theories and I guess rumors as well. I'll get back to the 200 plus followers in a minute, but so there's so many weird rumors, right? Someone told me that if you would cross 50K followers, the reach would go down significantly, and I passed through that stage a few months ago, or I don't know when, like this year. And I noticed it, but also like, is it really true? Like, is it something that I have in my head or is it actually happening? And then there's the rumors about the LinkedIn algorithm pushing people to thought leadership ads. And that's another rumor. And then there's people all talking about this kind of stuff. So is it actually true? I'm not, I'm sort of like on the fence on this because when about 2 weeks ago, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to put this through the test. So I worked my ass off for an entire weekend. I tried to create really good content that I feel like this usually works for me. And then I put it out there. And then immediately after 1 week, my reach went back up by 100%. And this week I do a lot of long form and I do stuff that I know it gets less reach. And now I'm down 60%, I think. So there's so many factors in play. But to get back to your question about the 200 followers, it's going to be tough, but it's going to be tough for everybody starting out because you can have start off with a great network of, let's say you have 10,000 people because you were in a corporate job and you had worked with tons of colleagues and like CEOs, executives, you have tons of friends, former classmates, whatever. That means that you have a legacy following that are basically not relevant for what you're going to do. So even if you have 10,000 followers versus 200, principle of getting quality content out there still applies, I would say. The leverage will be different, obviously, because the reach for 10,000 people is bigger. But if your content is so bad, you're actually going to lose people. So I think if you're at, let's say, between the 200 and 1,000 people in this legacy network, you just gotta make damn good content about what you do, and you gotta make friends. You gotta reach out to people and engage with other people's stuff. I'm not saying that you should comment your ass off just like in the void, but be pretty strategic about it and find people who are a bit ahead of you. I'm not talking about influencers like 50K or 100K plus followers. I'm talking about, let's say, 5 to 20,000 people like followers. Those creators, they are still kind of like hungry to grow. They still want to reciprocate. They're very active. So those are ideally the best people that I would reach out to and maybe do collabs. I would probably do free work. Funny enough, I still do this, but it's also how I started. When I was at 1,500 followers, I worked with Matt Barker. We were already kind of like hitting it off as, I guess, like buddies, but he was already at 50K followers back then. And then I said, you know what? I think I can help you with your branding. So, and he's like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, I don't have to, I'm not going to charge anything for it. This is the first time that I'm saying this out in the open, by the way. But that's what I did, and he posted about it. I posted about it. It boosted my reach, but the revenue that came out of that one collaboration was just probably, I don't know how to say it, but it was really good, and it definitely boosted my presence. So yeah, if you are starting out small, you got to think big. And I think there's another guy, Louise Butterfield. So what he did was really interesting. I think when he just started out a few months ago, he was at maybe 2,000 followers, and he just sent me like a cold DM and like, hey, I want to interview you, and you'll get like content, social media snippets that you can use for your own content. Would you be interested? And he was like funny and all that kind of stuff, so very accessible. I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then he did this with a whole bunch of other creators, and now he grew to, I don't know, maybe 8,000, maybe 10,000 followers really rapidly. So again, be smart about it and collaborate and interact.
Yeah, that's great advice. Very grounded. I really love the way you shared all of that, and not bullshit. It was very grounded. It's amazing. Yeah, it takes time to get traction with content. Absolutely, you need to start building that audience. You need to start those first few interactions with your content are going to start distributing it to more people. So it takes quite some time, even if your content is amazing. And on that note, I still have one more question for you. It's nothing important, but if you both Dana and I, we have a completely different approach. We are not masters of content, but we have our own methods to book clients and all of this on LinkedIn. If you want to check it out, you can check out our Substack, and on it you'll find the previous episodes where we share all of these strategies. So if you're new to us, just go and check it out. It's createandearn.com/SM. I'm going to put it in the comments as well. My last question to you, Nick, is, do you think that designers and copywriters, for that matter, have a bit of an advantage here?
Advantage, how? Can I counter that question?
Yeah, like with content wise, like as a designer, when you put your content out there, you're putting your work as well at the same time.
Mhm.
And it speaks for you, as you said it yourself, like your design is so good that big people start reaching out to you and for you to work with them.
It's such an interesting question, right? Like, is it be able to write and design, is that an advantage or is it like a liability? Because if you think about AI nowadays, it will be pretty easy soon well, it's already easy to do, like to do design to a certain extent. And it's also getting easier to do copywriting, and also like it's getting better and better. The real difference though, and this is my theory about AI, and also to answer your question, is AI is only as good as the people who are like using it. So I think if we're talking about copywriters and designers in general, I think the great ones, or the people who are actually willing to learn to become really good and to put in the reps and to invest time and money into this, they will definitely thrive and survive. But I also fear for a lot of people who are doing the opposite, and they feel like, I'll just, I've been doing this for so long, so it will serve me forever. And they don't innovate, or they don't like develop, or they just suck. Like if you're a bad writer, you're not willing to become better, then I think there's a huge segment that's going to be wiped out due to AI and other technologic advancements. So to answer your question, yes, it can definitely be an advantage if you use it well, but it can also be a risk if you just take it for granted and don't really utilize it the way you should. Especially if you're like invisible, because that's why I'm such a big advocate of becoming visible on LinkedIn, for instance, or maybe other platforms. Because if you're such a great writer and such a great designer, but nobody knows about it, then how the hell are you going to make money?
Absolutely.
That's a fair point. Nick, you mentioned something about doing ghostwriting, but that was last year, and you said something along the lines of doing content design coaching. So, like, what is your main current offer right now? How do you help your clients?
Yeah, so I've done ghostwriting for a few months, and I thought it was really rough. I didn't really use AI. It was kind of depleting my creativity. But I learned a lot from it because I had to obviously create a lot of posts. So it wasn't necessarily a failed project, but it was more like a learning that I took to what I do right now, which is actually a few things. Obviously, I create my own content. I help other people create their content in a way that it attracts the right people, the meaning followers and customers. I also just launched this content design agency, which is a done for you service in terms of creating content, like copy and design for founders and creators. Also in the works, a community. So it's also going to be like a content design community. And that will household, let's say, probably like a cohort, like a course. And I'm building an AI tool, which is kind of like a content design AI tool along with a partner. His name is Jasper Ruijs. And it sounds like a lot, but what I think is a really interesting takeaway, or maybe more like an advice, is that how far you can go if you have this certain expertise. Because in essence, it's kind of like everything is pretty much the same thing. It's all about this ecosystem about around content design, but we're just creating new value ladders for multiple segments. So instead of kind of like charging your time or selling your time, you create more productized services. I'm not sure if I answer your question.
You actually did. No, you
I
actually
did.
did.
Okay. Yeah.
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 I thought that the main gig was the content design coaching, but it seems like you've really, really like scaled it up into different, as you said, value
It's
ladder
gonna take
steps.
a
So it
while.
sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the works, but yeah, the content coaching is already doing well. I've been doing that for a few months. I actually also paused it like every now and again. I feel like, yeah, I've been doing just a little bit too much. So now I'm going to focus on other stuff. The agency is actually derived from an offer that I called rebrands. And what I noticed there, it was like a done for you offer without any guidance. So I got a lot of customers from this, but also a few people who were not really happy with it. So like I'll just be transparent about it because they either didn't use it. It's not something that I can really control. But the other people, they were also like, yeah, now I've got all these assets, but I don't really know what to do with it. So that's why I came up with the agency offer that kind of like combines content coaching and the rebrands, because rebrand clients, they needed content coaching, and content coaching, they needed like design support. So this is the way to fill that gap.
Makes total.
Shall we move to questions? All right. Are you using AI or other apps to start your content?
Yeah. So in the beginning, I didn't really use it that much. I was also kind of in denial. That's the nasty AI tools are not going to take my job. But then I thought, yeah, I cannot really stay behind. Like I cannot be this dinosaur that's going to like talk about my own extinction without realizing it. So sure. Yeah. I use ChatGPT for mostly for hook generation. So one tip that I could actually give is, I'm not sure if that's a boomer tip, if you will, but what I tend to do and what I also tell my clients is to use, let's say Fathom or another note taker, and use that to basically just transcribe your sales conversations, or maybe do like a copy paste from your chat that you have in the DMs. And then I would just ask them like, hey, create 10 hooks to based on these transcripts and what you know about me, because after using ChatGPT for a while, it kind of knows you. What you
Yeah,
could
you're
also
trained.
do, what I've been doing, is creating a doc with my best content pieces, and I just like create a Word doc and feed it to ChatGPT. I also use Claude. That Claude is also pretty good, but yeah, then it just spits out hooks, and I can use those. I've tried to do content as well, but the thing is, I really like writing. So I'm arguably faster if I have to prompt my way through it. So yeah, I still write everything myself. I've tested a few AI, so like fully AI generated.
Yeah, that was the follow-up of the question.
Yeah. So actually, yeah, I've done it a few times, and one of them went viral, which was pretty interesting. The thing though, and I have to like refer back what I said earlier, if you don't really know what quality output is, you cannot really give it quality input. And also, let's say if you are a lawyer or you're not a lawyer, but you think like, okay, I need to protect myself for whatever situation, and I'm going to have ChatGPT draft up a contract or an agreement or like, I don't know, something important, and you're going to read it. And then you feel like, okay, I have no idea what this is. I have no idea if it's going to protect me. I don't know if it's going to help me, whatever. But I'm just going to turn it in anyway. So that's kind of like the liability or the risk of AI, or the advantage. If you know how to prompt it, then you're definitely in an advantage. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I have write sales copy for clients, so email copy, so sales page copies, copy, and I have a trained agent with all my copy and even swipe files and all of this, and the results are amazing. But only because I know what I'm discarding and what I'm going for.
Exactly.
Right. How do you show that you know what you're saying if you're just a newbie and don't have any case studies?
Right. What should I do if I'm completely new? And my first advice would be to build in public. When I just started out on LinkedIn, I needed leads, I needed clients. So that was a big problem for me. So what I was doing without even realizing it, I was just talking about my own successes and my own failures and my own transformations in a way. And I just used what I got to talk about what I did. And it could be, I don't know, anything from building a website or like how to create content, because that was the thing that I was doing. So I took everybody on this, let's say, journey, and everybody was like, I don't know, like 10 likes for every post that I got in the beginning. But I just documented my journey. And before you could actually, like, if you don't have any case studies, create your own case study and talk about that. And it's kind of like an accountability thing as well, because if you don't move forward, you don't have nothing to talk about. But if you do, and you feel like, okay, every time that I'm doing something new, I can talk about it, and at some point it's becoming a mindset. I still have this. Like if I keep building stuff and keep doing stuff and take risks, I have stuff that I can talk about. And that's how you can keep going. And that will be my advice for anybody who's new, or even if you're like super advanced at something, but you want to do something completely different. That's how I would go about it.
Yeah.
There is another question that's kind of similar to this one, but I feel like your answer would just be a continuation. So the question is, as someone who's starting out and doesn't have many case studies or clients, should we do more free work or undercharge, or like what's the drill?
Yeah. So it's kind of like a delicate thing, because there will people who take advantage from you, and that's not how that's not obviously what we want, right? We want to build healthy relationships. So I mentioned earlier the thing that I had going with Matt Barker. That was just, I guess, a little bit of luck, but also being visible and going out there and just show my craft. You have to be optimistic in a way that if you share this stuff enough, and it doesn't really sound like a strategy, I know, but if you do this to like enough and you keep getting better at it, and you basically flaunt it in a way, like in an actual way, the right people will somehow land on your, like, you'll stumble upon them. Not necessarily that they reach out to you, but for some reason you have to be very sensitive of who you come across. Like yesterday, I did this sales post, and one of my idols, and I'm not exaggerating, like I've been following this guy for 3 years, listened to like all his podcasts or like YouTube videos, and he yeah, we somehow got in touch, and then I immediately told like, hey, I'm not here for a quick buck. I can do this for you. I asked him a few questions, but I made it very casual. And then I said, like, if I'm gonna do this thing for you, maybe you can like do a few introductions, or and I can use your testimonial, and then we have a win-win. So if you can somehow go out there, take a little bit of risk, and be confident about it, like, don't be desperate, because people will smell it, and it's hard to fake that you're not really insecure about things. But if you can keep your posture and be very confident about what you do, and you come up with this, hey, I've got this great idea. I do this for you, and the only thing that I need from you is a testimonial or whatever. Then like even do a Loom video. This is something that I also told my clients at some point, because some people, they have to start over with the personal brand, and they're not like known yet. Uh, let's say, for instance, a UX expert, I told them, like, hey, maybe you should do this Loom video of a website or a product, and just give them like a free mini audit and send it over, so they see your face, they hear your voice, they get actual advice. You just end with, hey, this is for you. If this is interesting, I can also solve it. You can be direct with this. And like, if that's interesting, I can solve it. And because I've done this for other clients, or done this for myself, for in this case, and then we can jump on a call. So yes, you have to be a little bit creative if you don't really have much leverage or like a big following. But yeah, the right people will pop up at some point, and then you have to strike. Like, you cannot wait for things to happen. You have to take the initiative, and you have to be a bit smart about it and creative.
I did something similar when I first started. I had 1,000 something followers, and I challenged someone who had a lot more followers than I had. I said, look, there's a better way to do that. Let me help you do it. I'll build you an email list. Let's start doing this. And surprisingly enough, he said, all right, show me what you can do. And we did it. And I just
That's great.
challenged him publicly in the comments, you know?
That's also a way to do it. But there's also look, I get quite a few DMs from people who just pitch their work. That's not really working. I also sometimes see people roast some other person in a way that they feel like, okay, so if I'm gonna roast this person, I'm gonna tell them they're screwing up their, I don't know, like their website or their banner or something, then they'll probably hire me. But that
Yeah,
usually
that's risky. That's very risky. Yeah.
backfires. I know another great example. He's a buddy of mine, Matt Lakajev. I still don't know how to pronounce his last name, but we met up a few times in real life too. And he did something brilliantly. He called out Chris Do, and you probably know Chris Do. Maybe you don't, but he's a pretty big guy in social media. And I think he had like a podcast recording with Jasmine Alich. I think it was that. And then he
He
just
has a
called
few.
it. Yeah, he called them out for, I think there was something like, yeah, they said in something in the podcast recording that you shouldn't do hard selling. And he was like, yeah, I don't really agree with this. And he did it in such a respectful way. But he also invited Chris Do in that post that he did to do like a podcast recording. And he said yes. Like, and this guy is like a huge personality on social media. Like, he's got millions of followers. I've been following for 10 years, so I was like, shit, I should have done that. I was actually jealous. It's like, this is the kind of
That was smooth.
creativity
It
that
was
was
very,
really
very
smooth.
smooth.
And he said, you
Yeah.
should do the same thing. And I was like, no, man, I'm not going to do that. He's my idol. But that, if I would get a better odds of meeting with this person than I would do nothing like I'm doing right now. So, got to take a risk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense, and I can relate to that one. Everyone is uploading around the same topics: profile optimization, carousel designs, etc. How can someone stand out?
I guess there's a bias in that question too, right? Like,
Mhm.
if we linked about LinkedIn, LinkedIn will love you. I guess that's partly true. There's also other topics that we could talk about, like LinkedIn growth. AI does really well. But if you really pay attention to, let's say, the thought leaders or the creators, they're all always super specific about something. And the really successful people, they have been doing it for a long time. So standing out is never really one single act, but it's like a sequence of tons of similar acts and repetitions. So I cannot really answer that question from like what should we talk about to stand out of, let's say, a category or a trend or whatever. But if you talk about the same thing enough, and you obviously you need some like an audience who is interested in this, then without a doubt you're going to attract the right people. And some areas will generate more likes and comments than others. That's just as simple as that. But again, it's not about the likes and comments because
Exactly.
I think it's safe to say that 100% of all the people on LinkedIn are here to make money, right? If it's to get a job or to recruit people or to sell a service or a product, eventually, like it's such an emotional thing. I still like, it still stings when I have a post and it performs poorly. I'm just being honest. But I also think I know what converts right now. So if it ends up in having me having more leads, then I know that's the goal. And usually goes hand in hand because if you're successful at something, your product or service, and you showcase this the right way, it will also attract the right people and enough people to get engagement going.
Just to wrap this answer up, Dana, do you want to share the one rule?
I'm actually really struggling with this with one of my clients at the moment because he's got such a broad skill set and like his experience is out of this world. And he really wants to help people do the thing that he does without getting into specifics. But anytime he's having a conversation with someone, he sees an opening for something else that's not in his current offer, and he gets very tempted to go into that direction. And I keep trying to bring him back and to tell him, you're not going to be able to scale this way if you do something different for everyone. So the rule of one is solve one problem for one person with one solution. And this is your starting point. What is the problem you're solving? Who has that problem? Why do they have that problem? Where do they want to be when they solve that problem for themselves? And from there on, you start thinking, okay, how can I address this problem? And these are your content pillars already. And you don't have to talk about profile optimization if you don't want to talk about profile optimization. But at some point, I feel like trying to stand out becomes too much of a goal in itself. And if you want to just always zag when everyone else zigs, I'm not sure this is the best strategy, to be honest, because then you're just going to end up talking things not related to your offer. So I don't know. I'd love to have Nick's take on that.
Yeah, so it's funny, right? Like we tend to focus on standing out so much, but we don't really take the effort to do some the boring stuff. Like it's in our nature, I guess. But if you do the boring stuff, and I'm not talking about boring stuff, but be repetitive about the one message just for the sole purpose of getting it out there and to become known for something, and also it provides you feedback to maybe like tweak it a little bit. But if you do something long enough, you'll become unique on its own. And that's why, like, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a positive way if you keep going, because every new step that you take, and it sounds a bit fluffy, but it will provide you new insights and you can use those. And the more risk you take, the more insights you get. Like visibility is a risk. Talking about your experience is a risk. Being emotional about your job or failures, that's a risk. Like vulnerability is a risk. But sharing all that stuff, and I'm not saying from a diary kind of point of view, but more from a professional way, because we want to stay away from all the fluffiness. But that's going to provide you so much insight. And like it will also, like, it's not just content, but the content will put you in content with the right people. You have sales conversations. We talked about this before, but you can basically validate everything as long as you keep moving. And then that proposition, that's why I start with the 60% kickoff call, because you can never start with quality. You can never start with the perfect proposition. Always, it's like having a new house and you have to decorate it. It's never finished in the first day that you're living there. It's kind of like grows, and then you're happy with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Is the part with the constant movement that really resonates with me. Because if you don't try out new ideas, whether in content or in DMs, if you're doing outreach, then like how are you going to know? And also another thing that comes to me and what I see in client work as well is being so bloody emotional about it. And I know this
Mm-hmm.
is much easier said than done, but whenever you are doing something, just look at it as a science experiment. Just mark it as this is iteration A, I'm trying A, B, and C, record results, then do iteration B, record, I did A, B, and C. This is what I did differently. Change one thing at a time. Also very important. One thing at a time. And then
Yeah,
you compare your results and you can actually see, okay, this is the one that completely flopped. Try to understand why it flopped and then move on to the next thing. But don't try to change everything all at the same time. And you also need to keep moving as well.
exactly. I couldn't agree more. That's why the first 3 months are so crucial, but it's also the stage that most people give up because it's not really rewarding. You have to build the foundations. You don't really have the foundations to build anything on. So that's why everything is new. And you get the crickets and you get like, if you get sales calls, then they will probably reject you. And it's like one big test. And there's absolutely, in my experience, no way to skip those 3 months and to face that agony and frustration. But yeah, if you do, it's going to reward in more ways than I would actually personally imagine before.
Definitely.
All right, so we've got one here that is interesting. Are your customers coming from content, comments, DMs, etc., or are they or the silent audience and surprise you with a new project? I know you kind of already touched on this one. Don't know if you want to reiterate something.
It's definitely a mix. So in the beginning, I did more like I call it warm outreach. So I would put out the content for a significant amount of time, and then as a result, you get profile views, you get connection requests, you get followers, and it's kind of like a delicate process because you don't really want to be in their face and like, hey, yes, you viewed my profile, you want to buy my services, but it's more like a very small indicator that people are like indirectly interested in your services. So I would say that warm outreach based on your content is a very effective way to at least break the ice and see if people are interested in your stuff. Then there's the inbound leads that everybody wants, but it's also arguably the hardest to get there. I think it took me like 9 months to solely rely on inbound leads. And I think that was still quite fast. So now I do a sales post every 2, 3 months. By sales post, I mean like with an actual sales CTA. I
At
intend
bottom of the
to
funnel.
bottom of the funnel and like, hey, if you are ICP, you want this, send me a DM, like a typical hand raiser. You can also try the giveaways. Like I don't do this kind of stuff because it's just not my style, but I know that it has been working for other people. And what else have you? I don't do cold outreach, but I know it works for people. Not a tactic that I consider myself.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's so many.
Dana
So
and the guys at the Blueprint, they do warm outreach as opposed to cold outreach. We have entire episodes on that. So if you just go back to createanearn.com/sm, find our previous episodes, you can see all of that. And personally, what I do is list building, so email list building. From LinkedIn, I
yeah.
send people to an email list, and from there is where the sales happen. Again, we have also episodes on that, so go back to that if you want more information.
It's probably much better advice that I can give you because I still do everything myself, which is a really dumb strategy. And I actually
Well, because you can.
waste a lot of good. It's a great position to be in, but on the other hand, like
Yeah.
I've been dealing with this scalability problem for at least a year, and it actually hurts my reputation in a way because I don't really follow up on leads, which
Hmm.
is obviously a dumb thing to do or not do.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing like your email list when it comes to that. So like building an
Yeah.
email list and following up with them. All right. What's your strategy for competing with other 10 million creators on here?
Yeah. So I don't really believe in competition. I don't want to be this kumbaya kind of guy, but it's more like if you really pay attention to what you do really well, you are able to frame it in a way. Like content design originally it's actually a UX term and it means something else. But I worked with a great coach back then and he said you should totally promote this content design thing. And I was like, it sounds right, but I don't really know if it's gonna stick. And then we now I know if you talk about it often enough and you give the right context, you can actually claim that spot in the market. So that's why I don't really believe in competition. Obviously, there's people who do the same thing, but they frame it in a different way. And since there's only 1% of all the people that do content weekly, there's enough fish in the ocean. Like there's enough for everybody. So who cares about competition? You can learn from them, but you don't have to be envious.
Absolutely, and cooperation trumps competition. I agree 100%. I feel like most of the questions now are just repeated one way or another. There's one here about the algorithm. We future-proof your content, basically,
How
against
do
the
I, sorry.
algorithm. The algorithm changes and decreasing impressions.
Yeah, I think you can do all the assumptions and all the like read all about all the stuff about the algorithm changes, but I believe, and this is not backed on by any evidence, but I believe that if you put out quality content out there, it will always reward you. Like I don't think there's any platform that doesn't reward quality content. And obviously quality is a bit fake or relative, but I guess the best way to describe quality is if it helps other people because they will come back for more.
That's beautiful.
Good
Nick,
stuff.
thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.